All right. Happy April 19th. It's after tax day. I hope you got all your stuff in on time and that you're now going to get on to the rest of it. Let's see what Donna recently rewarded herself for finishing tax day by buying a 24,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, which we just opened up. If you haven't been looking on my Facebook Reels, you should check that out. That's a new skill that I'm trying to learn. And one of my reels, actually, two of my reels, apparently they said hit the highest 2%. Only 2% of reels get like 60 reactions or more. 60 reactions or more. I did not know that. Speaking of 60 reactions or more, this gentleman gets 60 reactions or more from me. He's the CEO of his own company. Him and I just recently collaborated at at Cascadia Meetings Professional International. The Washington and Oregon chapters collaborate. And we did a program on hybrid, and we actually delivered it on a hybrid. So I think you're going to enjoy meeting him. Let's welcome the one and only Tony Gavilanes.
Thanks so
Tony, what's going
much,
on?
man. Hey, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today and really talk about stuff that's close to my heart, man.
Oh, I know. And we were at Heart. Tony and I, too, recently, he was kind enough to show up at our program that we presented at the Northwest Event Show. Right. And so that was a big reunion hug fest, in person party around with that. So again, Tony, thank you for the support. Again, you're a new member. I think I'm like a almost 15-year member now of MPI, and Tony just joined this year.
That's
And
all right. It'll be like 7 years. You'll keep calling me like our newest member to MPI, Mr. Gavilanes. It's great. I'll take it.
you'll be the younger brother forever, Tony. That's what I
Perfect.
am. I'm the last of five, right? I'm over 50 and I'm still the little
As long as I
brother.
keep shaving my face, I'll keep up with the status.
Speaking of status, let's talk about that. Tony, for my friends who don't know who you are, why don't you take a moment to introduce them to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am a entrepreneur that has started a production company, specifically in audiovisual. We do event technologies. You can probably see kind of in the rear of me. We kind of specialize in video, lighting, audio, and staging for live events. And that really has branched out over the last maybe 7-ish years, specifically in the last couple, to virtual and hybrid. And we've done quite a lot of that and continue to do so. Yeah, and so we're a boutique, lovingly called a boutique little operation here in the Pacific Northwest. But we serve really, across the nation, and so far have not done any global programs. But anyone out there listening that is, trying to engage us for, anything outside of our britches, that's really the name of the game. Our company is kind of designed on being able to say yes to any vision, any request. And so we're creatives at heart.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And that's why we're little birds of feather, creatives at heart. How did you get into that? I want to know. Like, did you do something beforehand, or were you always, an AV dude?
Oh yeah, well the very very long story. I'll keep it short. Was that I started doing? I'm a musician. Behind in my green screen here is actually my drum kit, and all of my instruments kind of still live here in my studio. But I started out as a musician, and I went to a high school that had awesome recording program, and that really launched me into the technical arts. When I was in college, I started working with the tech crew, supporting local concerts, not local but national concerts coming through our university. And in my senior year of college, started a record company, which is actually the foundation for what TEP, Tech Event Pro, is today. It started out as producing music, and I quickly realized that I couldn't stay in that vocation. Otherwise, I was going to lose my heart and soul for music, just working in that and making money in that kind of capacity. And so we quickly transitioned into doing concert production. And that kind of led outside of working for musicians to working with organizations and businesses, nonprofits. And, that was in 2005 when we started the organization. And it's carried us on, man. I haven't been able to stop.
So I love. Well, first off, a record company. I gotta represent 62% of the audience and go, what's a record?
That's fair, right? So vinyl wax, right? No, we actually produced most of our stuff, and it was mostly digital at the time because that was when the phase was really kind of shifting over. But we still pressed CDs, and we had all of that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, really, it was this idea of just producing music. My major in college was in music business, audio engineering, and production. And so I spent a lot of time in the studio that we had at our school, recording and remixing music, producing different, songs and other things like that. But some of the most valuable time that I ever spent in college were all of the business classes. And looking back in retrospect, I wish I could have just stayed in and taken a deep dive into an MBA program or something like that, because as an entrepreneur, that's kind of where my like all of all the gusto came from, and it was really all of that stuff. So yeah, it was a cross discipline type of project that I did, but was able to take on a lot of different forms as time shifted.
Well, regrets, I had a few. That was a lyric. And Microsoft, when I was at Microsoft, I could have gotten an MBA for free. And that's one thing in hindsight, as a
Oh
business
man,
owner, going, that was a deal. Why didn't I take
like an
that deal?
accredited one, really?
Yeah, sure. Like UW, I think they pay the tuition fee. So, I mean, if you want to go take a big corporate job again one day, Tony, do it, get your MBA and then leave.
There you go, right? Like,
Be
get
one of
that
the
paper
ways.
and get out. Honestly, for any of the kids listening, like in the future, like now, 100%, like, I mean, that paper makes like a lot of difference to a lot of people. As an employer,
Yeah.
yeah, that education, stamp of approval, it's fantastic. So put yourself in, I'm into it.
Now you said something in here too, and one of my friends gave me his favorite quote, and like sometimes when you don't find your dream, you find your destiny. Is that
Mm.
the kind of like when you went from producing music and then suddenly realized like that's not the dream, it's a little bit of a nightmare? Maybe I should do something else. Is that kind of how it transitioned?
Oh, tell me about it, right? Like, well, I mean, like, I guess, to come back to the quote in a second, like, I'll kind of speak to the, dream becoming a nightmare, right? Like that, definitely, I mean, I think in music, it was really the most difficult thing for me to get, even four people together. I mean, like to practice music, drink beer, and like go out, perform, and, engage with the opposite sex. It was like not that hard, guys. Let's just like rehearse. Let's do this thing. But it became such a difficult task, to really get folks to show up and to kind of just spend their time and their energy doing that. So the birth of that production company, or the record company, was actually my little brother and I. We I decided, like, all right, forget this. I'm not going to be working on bands anymore. I'm just going to produce hip hop, because that's going to be I can produce the music, and I can work with a smaller group of people. And then I was like, I'm going to work with my little brother, and even that was just so taxing and just hard to get to be really anything. And so and then this is kind of a story I tell other folks too, because I essentially got into this phase where I was like, all right, forget everyone. I'm just going to produce electronic music, and it takes one person. I'm just going to like do that, and whatever. And then, John, I didn't produce a piece of music for another 7 years. And like
7 years.
literally, I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. But man, I mean, I found that like it's that homogeny of people, right? And like this idea of like having the sum of all parts being exponential to the the individual elements that go into it, right?
Yeah.
And so I find that in our brand at TEP, we, if I could define it in one word, relationships. And by far, it is like the thing that drives us, the thing that we try and drive and put value into. And I just find that I can't really do anything without the input of others.
Well, and let me just check. Have you seen Daisy and the Six? Right? Have you heard about this series, this music series that's out right now?
Oh boy, you got to educate me.
Okay, well, you got to go watch it because it goes on to the part two, though, which is Tony. I grew up playing in punk rock bands, and actually was the person that taught all of my friends how to play, and then they actually went on to play all these other things. And there is that part which is inside of a band. All right, when you watch Daisy and the Six, it's like one of the top 10 series that's going on. I think it's Amazon Prime right now, and It just shows you the dynamics that happen in band because it sounds easy. Get six people to or four people to show up and play music. But it's not that. It's always these dynamics and stuff like that. So why don't you talk to me about how do you evaluate and create teamwork on a virtual production team? That's like right now, one of our programs is going on. There was a section of it that last week, and we had an MC that was supposed to be part of the team, and the MC goes, "I got this amazing opening." Right. But then he goes, "What is it?" And they're like, "I can't tell you." Right. And so when he went into the amazing opening, he like, and here's our MC. And then he crashed around for like 2 or 3 minutes. And his bit was to like, he couldn't find the start video button. And like, he was like tripping around his house was like the bit he created. Right. And
Oh
then
man.
he had 45 minutes in the segment and he ended the bit within three. And then he cut to the first speaker
Oh geez.
42 minutes early.
Were there a few people that were just like, dude, is this real? Like, was that the thing?
This happened. This really happened. So anyway, so that's the antithesis of teamwork. I'm just saying, Tony, what's one of the one or a collection of the ways that you create teamwork when you're doing a production, especially a virtual production?
Yeah, well, I think that teamwork and is really, the game is won in pre-production, and I feel like getting involved with people, on the onset as early as possible. I mean, I am, one of these people who's just like addicted to SOPs. Everyone in our organization, part of their job description is to monthly document, the iterations of how the job is moving forward.
Oh, let me translate for the wonks out there too. SOP, standard operating procedure. Continue.
There you go, right? And so, you have this like plethora of documentation. And granted, like it's, a lot of it is referential. You're not going to necessarily, go back to it. But at the same time, like I find that all of that allows you to pick and choose and draw from and and move forward in ways that you feel like super confident. And I mean, for me, it's that like that relationship building, right, where I don't feel like there is any team unless you're able to really connect with folks and get to know like what's their dog's name, like do you like pickles, is like just understand a little bit about the people that you're going to be working with, in addition to the people that you're going to be going to be putting up on stage, right? And so finding a way to really connect, and I feel like virtual has been just really a godsend in that sense because it's so ubiquitous to just have these, one-off meetings, even if like it's 10 minutes long or something like that, just a quick connect, like let's kind of look each other in the eyes. Let's agree that we're going to do this together. I mean, that's the magic, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. So we do speaker checks and rehearsals all the times, and sometimes they are short like that, which is just like, Tony, I just want to let you know I'm your producer, right? Right. If you want, you're gonna just present a slide deck. That's great. Can I see it? And then so some of them are short, and then other ones like that. We had a panel that came around, and they spent the first 25 minutes of that 30-minute rehearsal talking to all the other panelists, going, "Well, what are we gonna do?" Right? What's the topic? What's the path that we're going to take? What are some of the
Uh,
questions? And so it would, but to me, that was super valuable. Right? I'm fine to like sit in that meeting and not say anything for 25 minutes. I'd rather them figure it out here in pre-production than have them try and figure it out on stage.
oh, God
Right? Going,
forbid.
I can't answer that question. You can't answer me that question. Right? I'm legally bound to not touch this question. There's, all these awkward things they could have hit as landmines, and they were able to navigate them all in pre-production and not on stage.
Man, you totally nailed it too, John. Like this idea of rehearsals is just like, really, really near and dear to my heart. We spoke about that a little bit in our Cascadia
Yeah.
session that we talked about. But this idea that I think that, when folks kind of come into a virtual or a hybrid sense, there's a lot of the pressure's off. I mean, like, am I wearing pants? You don't know. You know what I mean? Like, what are my socks like? Right? I think you posed that question like on social media, like a little bit ago. But it's like this, you can be really on your couch. You can be in a, you don't have to have the camera on. Like, if you're presenting, it's a completely different story. But even then, right? Like the onus to really like prepare and show up. I think just by the psychology of having, a camera in your face and you being, in a comfortable space, a lot of times the folks just don't really kind of show up with their best self, and that comes down to also the time spent getting prepared. So I feel like it's such an important element of really just kind of taking that time, forcing that time, right? As a producer, you kind of say, all right, like here's like 3 milestones that we're just going to have. They can be 5 minute like meetings, right? Like they don't have to be, these hour long, like full run a show, like step throughs. Like we'll also do that if you want to be involved, but also we'll record it and send it out to you, making it easy on folks.
Well, you remind me of one of my core principles too, which is like, well, you tell speakers to log in exactly like you're going to log in on event day, and we get people in cars, right,
Oh,
buses, right, airports. So like, are you gonna like log in from the airport? And we actually
sorry
had
for the background noise on my AirPod, dude. Can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah, it's like this. And let me just give you my most important point. Now boarding on 11 game 24 on
Classic.
the way to Kentucky.
Yeah, right.
So, because we've actually had that happen, we actually had a keynote that happened. But what I'm talking about is logging in exactly the same. Like right now, there's a music performance for one of the programs I have coming up, and they did dress rehearsal, but the right mics weren't there, the stage is not there. Like there's a bunch of stuff that's going to show up. Actually, we got it to show up the day before event day, so they
At
can do a
least.
full tech rehearsal. But it's so important because so many people go like, "Oh, I checked you once, we're done." But if
Seriously, right?
anything, right, if anything changes between now and then, it could mean the difference between that was awesome and this is catastrophic.
Oh
Right.
yeah, I mean little things too, I mean like especially going between, the Zoom platform, Teams, my doctor on telehealth or something like that, your devices, they get attached to all these different, settings. And God forbid that you even just like don't show up like 5 minutes early to your call time just to like double check those settings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's calamity ensues when you don't really come in like, like Rudy, like play like it's the Super Bowl, baby.
I actually got to see Rudy speak at a Cascadia event, so we'll have to
No
talk about
way.
that. Yeah, no, the
Oh my
real
gosh.
Rudy. Yeah, the
That's
real Rudy.
super cool. He's still kicking like right now. Like, I mean, out and about, just doing speaking events.
And he's still killing it. I thought he was actually a great keynote speaker. He was able to bring something different that the movie did, and that to me was kind of key, right? So, but speaking of key, how did you get into virtual? Like, were you into virtual a long time before, or did you make the jump like the rest of us on March 2020?
Oh boy, yeah. Well, we took the deep dive in March 2020, but we'd been really dabbling. So much of this the technology had been available, and I think some of the largest companies were really trying to push that accessibility element and really expanding reach. When you had the budgets, like pre 2019, it was kind of like an easy like answer. Let's just kind of add this like kind of percentage onto our production budget and reach the world, right? And like that's like it was a big pitch for us to be able to kind of go out and do these kinds of productions. Was that like you can get like all of your constituents on your email list potentially in this program where you'd never be able to get them down at the convention center to all drive in, all figure out what they're gonna wear and where they're gonna park and eat and all that stuff. Like the barriers were just really limitless, right? So yes, we've been doing virtual production minorly, kind of in and out really for probably about 4 years prior to the pandemic. But yeah, deep dive when it came to March 2020.
It's amazing too. Like in the history of my involvement with Meetings Professional International, I was like one of the early ones who were live streaming or trying to figure out how to get these remote audiences in because a lot of our membership is spread out amongst the state. So if you're like in Spokane, you're screwed because most of the programs are like in Bellevue and Seattle, right?
Heard.
Right.
Yep.
And that's because that's where all the venues are. Plus, if you do a program in Spokane, then you either really have to get a strong contingent from Seattle to go there. Because what you don't know behind the scene is the metrics. There is a metric for the average number of attendees. And so if you have like a 20-person meeting in Spokane, it's going to crush your metrics in terms of how they evaluate the chapter at the end of the year. So I just said, like, let's do this remote stuff. And then we said, headquarters said they could count it, right? If someone remote in Spokane is watching it, right, we can count each of the bodies that are there. And so we end up actually being the number 5 chapter in that year by using remote. And this is pre-pandemic. This is like 2016, people. So that
Right, because the analytics are really built into the platform for you in that way,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. And those are some of the great parts with digital. Speaking of the great parts of digital, so for you, Tony, of course, too, you took a deep dive. You probably dived into lots of other people's conferences too. I know I have. What has to happen for you for Tony to be engaged in a virtual meeting or conference now?
Well, I'll be honest, like, our clients, they drive us with their own creativity, and the budgets are really like where it kind of, makes or breaks whether that's going to be a part of the program or not. Oftentimes, especially now, like doing a live program like with a hybrid element, our goal is to really make that efficient on a budget bottom line. But prior to that, really it's the element of fun. I had my wife and I started a theater company about 12 years ago now here in Seattle, and we took on a venue, and like in 2019 we took on a venue like in Ballard, and it was a perfect time to get into in a theatrical arts space and get a lease, right? Because it was only about 12 months before we had the that rug pulled out from under us. But this idea that like what we did is I basically built out my entire garage as a production studio, and I did this kind of side camera thing where I think every once in a while I can see your above cam kind of coming down and showing the whole studio, right? Like I love that shot. There it is, right? But it's like it was that element of it, right, where you could also see the three guests that are in our three main guests at any one time. We had two co-hosts and then like a guest that would kind of be like rotating up. And we would basically be doing this kind of like live broadcast show, for the arts, and trying to get the theatrical and musical and artistic community engaged into back into the public sphere, whereas they couldn't go out and do their art. And for me, that is really like the name of the game. I mean, if I can put one word on it, it's access, right? It's accessibility. And I feel like that's one of the magic keys of virtual is being able to provide access for people that otherwise wouldn't be able to get their voice out there, get their message, share their life and their all of their goods. But at the same time, for audiences, like on the opposite side of it, like it's really near and dear to my heart. So access is a big one.
Yeah, that's virtual gives us access literally to the world, right? I've been in meetings. New Zealand's there, Germany's there, right? I'm planning a Founders Day right now where China and India, like some of them are going to be tuning in at 11:30 p.m. But there is a live aspect. I think maybe that's at the core of our industry is that live part when everything is happening in real time. Like, is that kind of like the energy or rush in theater? Is that because it's happening in real time? I mean, there's always this possibility of mistakes and disaster, right? And so I don't know. Is that something?
And spinning it, right? Like,
Yeah,
in music,
yeah.
you say like if you play a wrong note, play it twice and call it jazz, right? And like that's absolutely, John. Like when I got like really drawn into theater. My wife, it was one of their, her really like, kind of like near and dear to her heart. And it was crazy because while I was kind of, working on my company and kind of, building different things, working for clients and stuff, she and her best friend were on the couch behind me, just kind of talking about this play that they had done in high school. They wanted to stage, and I was kind of sitting there like, you guys could, start a company, not just do one show, and like, well, you guys like, could use a website. And so I kind of became like the business, manager of that organization. And it was fantastic because we really kind of like built on momentum. And man, I'll tell you what, like I'm super, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I love talking to people about like ideas, about
Yeah.
businesses, and just kind of like engaging, momentum and different things. But man, when I got into the theater, granted, it's totally different now. Like, post pandemic, the equity and pricing of getting an artist to go out and perform is a lot different than what it was. But I'm going to tell you the story of, in, the 20 teens, essentially. We basically built a company where we would have like, I mean, upwards of 30, 35 people sometimes, all being able to show up like 4 nights a week
Yeah.
for 5 to 6 hours. And like there's like a $50 stipend, like that kind of covers parking, like over the course of like a 3-month period, right? And like sometimes like, we'd make enough money to like go out and buy a bloomin' onion like for everyone at like, at the Outback,
You'd probably
but
do
it was just this kind of like unbelievable, amount of love and energy that people all kind of believed in, the combined effort, and that swept me up entirely.
Aw. Speaking of sweeping up us entirely, check this out. I got a comment here. Two rock stars right here, and it's from Brett Robertson, the president of SH Worldwide. What up?
Hey, Brett.
Thank
Nice
you
to
so
hear you,
much.
man. I'm curious, Brett, if you have any feedback for us on your perspective for hybrid and virtual, because we've had talks before, and I mean, he's one of a number of people in different contingents that are just like, I don't believe in it. I'd rather like, let it move off, and like kind of go back and forth. And, it's every day kind of changes back and forth. But I mean, if you have any like thoughts for us, like drop it in chat, like shoot us another message or something like that. Cause I'm really excited about engaging, the comments and questions from our audience to really just talk about that. And I mean, cause really we're developing this future of virtual together, and the challenges that you're facing are the same challenges that we're all facing, and really creating quality, engaging content for the masses.
Yeah, speaking of challenges, Dan Ross earlier on YouTube said sound went off, and then he came back and goes, "No, it's my bad. Fighting earbuds."
You're literally right. Like, no, I'm sorry. Like the Kentucky flight is aborting, right? It's got getting a little bit of feedback here.
At least this software is working better than Southwest. Oh, too soon. Too soon.
Beautiful.
Okay. Speaking of which, Tony, so yes, we'll be looking for questions on there for those who are live with us. We appreciate you. Let's talk about this. Right, we did talk about hybrid, so let's go through hybrid a little bit. Right, what's your current view on hybrid? So mine is around the gamut, right? And I just love like some of the early people, like Jan Keck had the very controversial going. I think hybrid is the worst of both worlds. And I'm working with Rick Altman today. He diverged his conference, so he did hybrid for 2 years. He did great, by the way. Don't get me wrong. He like very engaging, both in person and virtual. I felt like he was doing it right if you're going to do it. But for him as a conference organizer, he said that he split it. He'd rather just do a in person and then a virtual, and that so he could fully take advantage of both of those platforms for both of his attendees. So I'm curious where you are on the hybrid spectrum.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm wondering if the most previous example you used, if like if his team was small enough that they just couldn't do it effectively on both at the same time. Because John, I think you and I both know you need a virtual host, that is able to curate this program, same as you would have an MC or an auctioneer or whoever's going to be, up on stage. You really need that. You can't just turn on a live stream and, expect for the best, and
Oh, and
watch.
side note, I want to hear Tony's commentary about Netflix second failed live stream. Did you hear about this?
Oh my gosh. No, I needed to perk up to the news, man. Like, tell me about this. What happened? They were doing a keynote or something like that?
A month ago, they did Chris Rock's brand new comedy special, which everybody was watching because it was going to be one of the first responses to the slap heard around the world.
Okay.
And the live stream failed. They later had to post it in like as a regular video. But
Oh, but you have like a million people watching that, I'm sure, on their network, like, that boom, like bye-bye.
so the other show that happened this week was Love is Blind. They're in their fourth season, which actually was here in Seattle, right? And they had the reunion, which like there were a lot of people who wanted to watch this thing. It's one of the top 10 shows right now on Netflix, and the live stream for an hour just gave out, sorry, we're having technical difficulties. And then they decided they gave up. They just said, this live stream is not happening now. We will post the video within a day.
Well, I mean, there's really no hybrid or true virtual without doing it live. I mean, like, that, John. It's about like having this momentary engagement. It's like the conversation we're able to have
Yes.
is by the virtue of it being live. Like you could record your bit and I could come in afterward and do my post production, and we could make it work and like put it through an algorithm and like, out pops a video. But really like the virtue of it is like in having it be live.
Yes.
One of the tricks that we do in production is just kind of like fudge that time, element where, we might perform the keynote or the general session at like 9 a.m. local time. but then it hosts and does like the live stream at noon and
Yes.
onward, like just in case anything was to happen. And like, you can kind of, keep your constituents or your people that are going to be on the on the stage in their same attire, so that if you need a live Q&A portion, like at least the program itself was had a chance to do its thing, and you can like work on it just immediately afterward, get it up, and then kind of splice in the live portions as necessary. I mean, I'll be honest, most of the live streams that happen in corporate are done exactly that way, where you really only you have the super well produced, well oiled press play type of
Yeah.
type of scenario, and then the only parts that have the live interaction are done in a live forum type of scenario. And being able to splice that and make it one seamless, homogeneous experience is a task, but it's not that big of a task. So I think for that reason, and the safety net that kind of falls in there, you kind of use the best of all worlds in that sense. So I mean, it's cheating, but I think that that saying that time is relative, you can really make that used to your advantage in this case.
Well, and especially if the programming is something that is like more like a show, right? I really think that like
Mm.
live like this means that we could take questions, from the source or wherever and I think that's really a key part where you want to do live. So, for instance, in a conference, I really recommend that we do programming live, like that's training. So that it goes back to my engagement theory that says this meeting is different because you're here. Like right now, Tony and I are with each other, and like he knows too. Like 80% of this content has been mainly improv, right? Because I gave him 3 questions, and eventually I'll get to those 3 questions. But all the other ones, I make up on the fly, and I think that's really a core aspect to live programming when you're responding to the audience. But if you don't need to respond to the audience, such as a corporate, broadcast of a thing, right? Then yeah, you can reduce risk, you can mitigate risk and still get the effect of something being released at a time and having a global experience like that. So
But John, like it kind of goes back also to that like element of theater, right? My wife, she, I was ever, especially at our venue, I was like, I'm the tech guy. I can bring in all this live streaming stuff. Let's do Austin City Limits in Seattle. And she's just like, it's not the same, Tony. It is not live theater. If you have to watch it through a camera, you don't smell the people, and I'm just like, oh, like, okay, I guess I understand, but there's like, there is like real value to having like a performance or some kind of like interactive type of thing. And I think that in corporate theater, we've really gotten away from that. The elements of storytelling, the
yeah,
elements of like having like the breath and the kind of blank space, to
yeah.
create the tension, right? Like there's just so much like drive value that we kind of forget about, like the interaction of the audience, right? And if we can really approach our programming from that element, you're absolutely right, John. Like we draw so much energy off of our audiences, and that's good, high quality stuff.
Yes, yeah. The audience, and it's yeah. Even in Rick's course, he was just saying, the first part is it's not about you, right? Although he has two great tenets here. You are the presentation, right? No one ever came to a presentation to say, "I want to look at your slide deck." They want to see
Sure.
the speaker, right? And then the second part goes, it's not about you, which is, all right, all the content is meant to that you should start with content that's going to help your attendees, right? That not you don't come up and drop 42 minutes about how great I am, right? That's like the
Oh,
worst thing.
exactly, man. And it's like it's perfectly exampled with if Brett's still on the line, like he'll remember this with a lot of love. Like one of our last programs that we did together was in Long Beach, California, where we had Magic Johnson on the stage doing the celebrity keynote. And he, after about 2 minutes of sitting on stage, he was just like, this is not really that great and comfortable. Like he got up, he walked off the stage, and he did like the rest of his 45-minute keynote like inside the audience and just
Yeah.
walking between tables. And granted, for us as a production crew, and the camera, like listening to do like the comm on the B channel with the director and the cameras was just like horrendous. I was like, I'm just going to stay off, because they were trying to relight everything and kind of get everything, set. But man, I'll tell you what, from like the experience of the people in the room, it was something, when they're just like, magic is right there, and he's like talking to you and he's like asking you a question, like, giving you an elbow, like, hey, bud, like, what about this, right? Like that, it's the 80% of the interaction that we just don't even try. That is just like, I mean, it's the 20% of the effort, but like you really achieve so much on the other end of it.
I'll just give the nods to the authenticity, which is that he dropped, he felt it too, which is great. Not many most speakers feel it and like, well, I'm dying on stage here, right? But they're just like, oh, I got to drive this plan, right? But I'll just give this to all the speakers. Do something different, right? If you do something different, it's so valuable, right? Even if you do it wrong, for the most part, most of the people will give you latitude for trying, right? At least trying. And in this case, it worked. By the way, you can't text on your cell phone when Magic Johnson is standing next to you. You are going to drop that phone and look up at him, because if he sees you texting,
as you got the selfie stick, like, okay, bro, give me one.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, Tony, you're a serial entrepreneur, which means that you love to look into the future. I would love to see what's in Tony's crystal ball. What do you see for production, whether it's live, in person, the future? And I love to hit on engagement. I made a joke actually on April Fool's Day this year. I said engaging virtual meetings is now engaging meetings, and then I made the joke. I said virtual is the dumbest thing that humans have ever created, right? But there is a part too, which is the engaging meetings is still really the problem. The engagement is also the number one problem in in-person meetings as well as virtual meetings. So what does Tony see in the future?
Man, like I've been a big proponent of like the microeconomies for a long time. And I feel like, the social networks are they've forever, like, I mean, I've become allergic to being on social media, to be honest with you, just because of that kind of macro world that we're all trying to feed into. And I feel like, the future, and so many of these headlines that, we're reading kind of in the event world as well are, how do we, create engaging moments for all of these different niches? It's like, well, that's your answer. You basically break it up into niche types of programs, right? You do, I mean, if it's, instead of doing one giant, massive general session where you bring people from all over the globe in and like do this whole big thing, you create, you take that spend and you break it across like a few months and you do events that are really geared specifically toward people, because if you really just focus on, like, people who wear like Patagonia ski jackets and happen to have been to Oregon and, whatever, I mean, you're going to get exactly who you're going for. And like, there's, we're talking about the internet right now. I mean, like those people are out there and you can reach them. And if you're creating, content specifically for them, you're really winning in the game, because that for me, it kind of goes back to the whole element of relationships. You can really feed people and get connected with them on so much of a deeper level rather than this kind of like, hey, this is what I want you to know. It's just really soliciting from them, in that same way. You craft things for them just based on the simple fact that you're not crafting it for a broad shotgun spray of different targets.
How do you think tech is going to help us connect more? Like, I know connection is your thing, or relationships in a thing. Can tech actually play a role in assisting in that, or is that a strictly human thing?
Man, I think that tech can absolutely play a role, and like it kind of goes back to this this concept of like, I'm allergic to Facebook, right? My wife got on our buy nothing group like in Shoreline, Washington, where we live. And I was just like, what is this thing? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm going over to, our neighbor's house to go pick up like these, wine glasses because like we're having Thanksgiving and like we need like more wine glasses. And then, she'd be putting out these kind of like paper bags of just like random stuff that we have around the house, which by the way, I'm so glad that there's like stuff leaving our house because we have way too much stuff, you know what I mean? But like this idea of like this micro social network that is like, I find is so valuable to take this amazing technology behemoth that is Meta and basically like activate it for the local like microcosm that is Shoreline, Washington, that you're basically like feeding an incredible amount of tools and ability to, I mean, the neighbors who otherwise, I mean, we took cookies to the, next door neighbor when they just moved in here, they're like renters and we do it every like other year basically now. But like the people right beyond them on the very next house, like I can see them out my window, but I mean, we haven't met them. And that's weird to me when I think about that in an abstract sense. It's just so strange that we're not more connected. That we have like all of this long life that we're like, oh, drudging through and got to do all this stuff, but we just have no opportunities to connect like that. I feel like absolutely, John, to answer your question, technology is primed for us being able to make better and more connections and really like I mean make it easier to do those micro niches, finding the people. Obviously it's like a lot easier to do that, but really connecting with people in those micro niches, definitely.
Have you ever read the book, The Long Tail?
Man, you're dropping references that I've just like have no, fill me in.
So Tony, in the book The Long Tail, it looks just like Malcolm Gladwell's book, but it's somebody else. And the Long Tail says, right, there's a logarithmic curve, and the Long Tail says that that things like infinite shelf space that virtual online stores have been able to create has now destroyed the super pop, right? Or like the pop icons like Michael Jackson technically can't exist now because what happens is you can now serve all those micro niches. Technology allows us to serve all these micro niches because when you have brick and mortar, right, you only had enough to hold this much product. And so therefore you can only hold product that was going to sell, to these. But now, right, I think Amazon's statistic is they only have to sell like 3 albums or 3, records or downloads to something to make it profitable enough to make it, to list it on their site. So that's why they list everything, right? And so that's really how it's changed. The technology's changed that accessibility, and that micro niche is something that goes back to the audience. Audiences now have lots of choices, and they want different things, and now they don't have to necessarily settle. They can actually get them, and I think that's really the part. Like I think in community building too, something else I work a lot on in community building is that the feeling that you're home. Right, a micro niche is a place where you end up finding out like I want to join this micro niche because, right, I feel like I'm at home, I feel like I belong, I feel like I'm a piece of this. So I love that technology is at least allowing us to do that because you could find these niches now, even if you're actually in a far away, maybe remote, rural environment. Right, Tony?
Man, absolutely. And like, I mean, creating, this ability to just like, translate a program like this, even automatically, you get the right kind of, software involved in between these things. And we can be, broadcasting in 50 languages dubbed, you know what I mean? Like that's unreal. You talk about like access, you talk about, bringing in people that didn't even know they belong in this niche, but then they come across this thing, and where, I mean, again, it kind of like at the whim of the algorithm, but then on the other side of it, I mean, if you plan on winning in pre-production, then you're finding these people and you're really engaging these people ahead of time, feeding them with value, and drawing them into this gravity that's kind of their home in that sense, right? I'm with you, man.
All right. I never do this, but I'm going to do this with Tony. I want to do a lightning round. Are you ready?
Ooh, let's do it.
Lightning. Oh, wait. Let me see. Hold on a second. Let me see if I
You got a
have.
drum roll?
Do I have a bell somewhere? Oh, wait. Here. I'm gonna try this. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay. I've got something for lightning round. Here we go. Lightning round. Favorite food.
Pizza.
Okay. Favorite beverage.
Ooh, I was going to say Coke. No, not Coca-Cola, but Coca-Cola.
Okay. Do you drink alcoholic beverage?
Not anymore. Quit 7 weeks ago, and I'm so proud of it.
Oh my gosh, 7 weeks. That's a good one. Okay, good. How about this one? Ice cream.
Oh man, my wife eats all of it, and she actually like we won a charades one time because she was like, I was like ice cream. Yeah, so I don't eat it, but she does. But my favorite is mint chocolate chip.
Mint chocolate chip. That's one of the top two. Okay, streaming service. Which one?
Um, Apple TV.
Okay, favorite show on Apple TV.
I would say Severance. That was pretty amazing.
Ooh, good choice. Good. Wait, whoa, where's my bell? Okay, there we go. Favorite camera.
Favorite camera? I'd say the uh, Black Magic series of stuff. Just that whole suite of everything. I'm just into everything they make.
Okay, favorite computer.
Favorite computer is definitely the MacBook Pro. Hate to say it, I'm an Apple boy.
Well, you are an Apple boy. And last one wait, is best experience ever at an event.
Best experience that ever at an event was listening to Howard Schultz of Starbucks talk in like 2012 about how Starbucks was going to, in 5 years, take basically absorb McDonald's corporation. And I was just like, what kind of world do you live in? And then I was like, that has also stayed with me forever because I'm like, the vision of a coffee store to become a culture company and then to say like, oh, we're going to like basically absorb the biggest fast food chain in the world. I mean, like they didn't, but like they became a fast food chain in their own right, So yeah, that has always stuck with me.
All right, there you go. That's the end. Tony survived our first ever speed round. Did you know that a Starbucks once in the world sold a hot dog?
No way. That's crazy.
I worked the International Starbucks Franchise Conference, and they talked about I think it was Japanese or Chinese, an Asian Starbucks started selling a hot dog, and it started selling, and then corporate had shut it down because it didn't match the brand.
Oh man, that's
They had to go through the conversation saying, "Does a hot dog fit Starbucks brand?" And then
they got a team of like 20 people all working on that one. That's amazing. Like, yeah, I love that, right? I think that brand is so important and like experience. They're doing a great job. They're building that culture company, and the culture does not include hot dogs, unfortunately.
All right. Well, if people listen to this interview, and there are a few of you. By the way, we had a code collection of people on here. I think you also had some of your teammates on here. If you wanted people to remember only one thing from this interview, what would it be?
I would say that the future is in really connecting with people in a really, really deep way, and I think that, as we're going forward with technology and apps, there's so much propensity to just kind of sit back, let the algorithm do the thing, like let the AI do your job and all that, and I'm such a big proponent of, lean further in, like get deeper with people, take, this ability that we have to really just like, connect in a meaningful way. And so, yeah, I'd leave you with that.
And I put Tony's link. I think Tony, you put either LinkedIn or your company website, right? What is that?
Which one is it? The techeventpro.com or is it LinkedIn?
Oh, yes. I think we put Tech Event Pro. So make sure and click the link if you want to find out more about Tony. Tony, thank you so much for an amazing interview.
Absolutely, John. You have a wonderful one.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony. All right. We've been speaking with Tony Gavilanes here, which I guess now is always going to be a lifetime MPI first-time member for the next 7 years. But more importantly, listen to that focus on the relationship, right? We are passionate about using events to create and further relationships that ideally make a difference in people's lives. And so think about how you can make that difference. Speaking of which, if you're on here, you want to make a difference in my life, make sure and hit subscribe or follow or click or any one of those things, depending upon the platform. And by the way, look for the first episode of this also is coming into a podcast. It's engagingvirtualmeetings.online. I'll say that again, engagingvirtualmeetings.online. A re-podcast version of all these interviews so that it's audio only, and you can actually start picking up. An episode is going to release every week on Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time here on Engaging Virtual Meetings Podcast. See you next time.
Always start people and keep